And now, stealing the microphone from me, kicking me out of my own studio, Norm Leahy caught up with the Attorney General, King Cuccinelli, as he runs for governor and makes the case for his number one platform issue, schools.
Norm Leahy here on the Score Radio Show, heard all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you haven't been paying attention, there is a gubernatorial race going on right now between some guy named Terry McAuliffe and another guy whom we all know and love for a long time, Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General of Virginia. The Attorney General joins me on the phone right now. On the road, as usual, I understand.
True enough. Big state.
Your big issue now, and the big issue, I think, probably for the rest of this campaign is education reform. Earlier in the summer, you came out with a series of proposals to change the face of education in Virginia, in some ways quite substantially. Explain to us, if you can briefly, what the main points of that reform proposal are and how it's being received as you go around the state.
Well, there's a lot of different aspects to it, but the two biggest, most obvious thrusts are reforming the SOLs, which really affect everybody, to move away from the teaching to the test challenge that we have that also frees up our school calendar so we don't have to see the pre-Labor Day start bill every year because everybody doesn't have to take the test at the same time, and also gives us flexibility for quick turnarounds for kids who fail the test and want to retake it. It also gives us a fair evaluation of teachers. The other big part of our education proposal is to provide options to the parents of children in failing schools and subpar schools. And we have taken this to Petersburg to talk about it in a town hall meeting. It was very well received. Tonight, I was in the south side of Richmond talking about it and was generally well received. And, and one of the points I made to the crowd, and, not everybody appreciates it, and what's the reaction? And I said, look, when was the last time anybody ran for governor and with a major party candidate focusing so much time and attention and effort in, frankly, the neighborhoods that don't get much attention, where the schools are failing, where the opportunity represented by our educational system for the kids there just isn't up to snuff. And what are we doing about it? And a lot of the alternatives I hear from the other side is more of the same. And that's the very definition of insanity when it hasn't worked. I believe we can improve our public schools. Florida has done that by giving parents choices and options that have made their own public schools better while giving the children in those failing schools options to pursue opportunity, to pursue whatever it is their dreams may be, right where they live. And that's something that we want to hand over to parents, whether it is starting charter schools and making that whole process easier and opening constitutional doors to it, whether it is reforming the school their children are in, or whether it is opting their children out and moving them to another school, whether it's public or private. Because our focus here, and of course when you talk about any involvement of private schools, a lot of people go particularly berserk. And I got a question tonight, well, we'll just divert money for public schools. Well, only if parents choose the private school option, and the only way they get the opportunity to do that is if their child is in a failing school. So if your focus is the schools, you might object to that. If your focus is the children, you want them to have that option. And my focus is the children and them having every opportunity to succeed that every other child in Virginia has because they have decent public schools. They have good public schools. And one of the things I'm convinced of is that this will help improve our public schools.
Well, and as you probably have seen the headlines too, maybe you haven't, you've been campaigning, is that the Obama administration, which has never really liked the idea of choice, even limited school choice, has taken the state of Louisiana to court over its voucher program, which is different from what we have in Virginia. But they take a very dim view of this. How would you respond to a challenge from on high?
Well,
like
my first response is they've got no business dealing in this subject area. Each state can decide what suits its children the best. And as long as they're not discriminating against anyone and offering more opportunities, it's kind of hard to see how one might discriminate that way, unless you only offer it to some kids and not others that are similarly situated. We're talking about offering more choices and opportunities to the parents of all children in Virginia who are in failing or subpar schools. And part of the discussion tonight of one mother who has 2 children who deal with IEPs, these educational plans for children with learning disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very frustrated by the sort of shuffle them along mentality that some schools have. And I think that may be also an area that we may want to look at for offering opportunities for those parents as well, for their children, so they can flourish and blossom to the fullest opportunity that they might enjoy.
Well,
and that is an area in the General Assembly that's actually received at least some degree of positive reception already, including from the chairman of the Finance Committee in the Senate, where he has been advocated for bills. He's brought them himself for some severely disabled children to have other educational opportunities.
Well, and another component that is a more recent component in your education reform plan is the idea of using historic tax credits to rehabilitate, refurbish, and rebuild schools that are basically coming apart at the seams due to age and neglect. And Governor McDonald has ordered an inventory of all of the schools in the state to find out where these decrepit structures are. This is actually a job creator. And
sure it is.
And the way I look at it, out of the 2 major gubernatorial campaigns, you're the only one now that seems to have a concrete jobs plan. But
I'm the only one with a jobs plan that's concrete enough for an economist to look at it and parse through it and say this is about how many jobs you'll create, and ours is over 50,000. His is unrateable because there isn't really a plan.
Well, of course Terry has a plan. He's going to build houses in Florida or some such nonsense. But this is what people I don't think get enough, is that education, especially primary education, really is the basis of any kind of workforce you want to have to be economically competitive. And on the campaign...
Well, and it's surprising to me the incredibly high proportion of employers who list workforce as their top concern, their top priority when they're thinking of expanding or potentially coming to Virginia. It is an incredibly high number. The Virginia Chamber's study, if I'm quoting my numbers correctly, don't hold me to this exactly, is something like 35% of employers. And, we think of things like transportation that we talk about so often. I'm from Northern Virginia. That's a big deal to me. But that came in at 15% among employers. And, it is a big deal, especially in a struggling economy that tends to be producing mostly part-time jobs right now, to be able to plug kids and adults into these skills gaps so they're fully employable in careers, things they can live on and live in and grow in.
Right.
And it offers us opportunities for more economic advancement for the whole Commonwealth.
Well, and you touched briefly on transportation. You probably more than others realize that in the transportation law that was passed, money was diverted from education into building roads. And Democrats went along with it. I think it's the first time Democrats have ever agreed to divert money from education and put it into roads. Terry McAuliffe, of course, doesn't talk a lot about that. He makes up numbers about how you're going to cut education spending other places. As your plan moves forward, and hopefully after the election, which you hopefully will have won, how do you intend to put more money into schools, or do you intend to make them work with what they have more effectively, or how do you intend to deal with that issue?
I expect them to work more effectively with what they have. I do want to release the localities from a lot of the mandates that come just from the state level.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we do funding calculations in Virginia based on the standards of quality, so-called SOQs. But that doesn't mean we have to hold the localities to, if we say they have 1,000 students in their high school, well, that equals 2 librarians. Well, maybe they'd rather have a physics teacher than a librarian,
mm-hmm.
than a second librarian.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me we ought to let the schools decide that. I don't think they need the state telling them that any more than we need the federal government telling us how to do business in education. So we will free them up from some of the mandates that the state imposes,
mm-hmm.
So that they have more flexibility. Talked to a couple of superintendents who are very enthusiastic about that. And so we're going to be taking some steps to help the public school system gain some flexibility locality by locality. And we're going to look at ways that we can drive the dollars into the classroom, into teaching, into the resources kids use to learn rather than administration, which has been growing more quickly than teacher salaries, more quickly than student population. It's just not where our money is having an impact on education of children, and so we want to address that as well.
Exactly. And you are on your statewide tour to talk about your education plan. People can find out more about your tour and its locations, stops, on your website. Is that correct?
Cuccinelli.com, easy to find if you can spell Cuccinelli.
Well, is that going to be on the test? Oh boy, I better study.
Yeah. No, the test is easy because it's multiple choice. It comes on November 5th. There's nothing else that looks remotely like Cuccinelli on the ballot. So.
Oh, okay.
It shouldn't be too tough for folks.
Ken Cuccinelli, the Republican candidate for governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about your education plan. Let's talk more about it soon, Ken.
Great, Norm. Glad to be with you. Glad to talk about education.